So recently a friend of mine asked me to explain the logic behind the Ruy Lopez a little bit, so here I am. He said that he was surprised that strong players often play the first 10 or 15 moves really quickly, just rattling off moves like it was no big deal. And he wasn't sure what kind of logic would be strong enough to really inspire that kind of confidence. So I'm going to do the best I can to explain it. And so after e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, the basic premise underlying the Ruy Lopez, and I would really argue any opening starting with 1, e4, e5, is the fight over the e5 square. So white is going to do everything he can to put pressure on e5 and try to dislodge that pawn from it there, either by luring it away or by capturing it. And black is going to do everything he can to keep it there. So after bishop b5, white is already toying with ideas of playing bishop takes c6 and knight takes e5. So after a6, black is just counting on a little tactical nuance that if white goes for the bishop takes c6 and knight takes e5 idea, he's going to lose his e4 pawn as well, either with queen d4 or lose the g2 pawn with queen g5. So white can't really take on c6 and take on e5. So after bishop a4, knight f6 castles. Here again, there's some theory involved with knight takes e4, and this is a different line than the one I really wanted to talk about. But this can definitely be played, but black has to be very careful after d4, where the position is going to open up and he's going to have a hard time developing his pieces and keeping his king safe. So after bishop e7, rook e1, now white is definitely looking to play bishop takes c6 and knight takes e5 because the pawn on e4 is defended. So black has to do something about that. And after c3, my idea is basically to play d4, and I'm anticipating that against e takes d4, I'm going to be able to play c takes d4 and have total control over the center. So after d6, again, black is strengthening e5. So after I play d4, for example, he's just not going to play e takes d4. He's just going to keep his pawn there, which is a very good idea. And here I went h3. So I basically want to play d4, but I don't want to have to deal with any pins following bishop g4, which is going to indirectly undermine my control over the center because the knight on f3 is an important piece in that respect. So now I'm definitely ready to play d4. And again, this might not seem like it's fighting for the control over the e5 square, but it really is, because black's idea is to play rook e8 and bishop f8, and that way allowing the rook to defend e5. And the problem, if he plays rook e8 right away, is that he's always going to have to deal with these very annoying knight g5 moves. So after h6, d4, rook e8, now I need to decide what I'm going to do, because though fighting for e5 is very nice, I also have to develop my pieces, because I'm not going to be able to do anything efficiently without my pieces in good squares. So right now I would like to play knight d2, knight f1, and knight g3, because g3 is going to be a pretty decent square for my knight, and it's going to defend e4 and maybe prepare knight f5 at some point and get an attack on the king side. And I'll decide where I put my bishop later, but bishops are usually not as important to develop as knights because they can do a lot of stuff from their starting squares. And it might seem like I overlooked this move, e takes d4, c takes d4, which black wouldn't want to do usually, unless he can have something very real to show for it. And in this case, white would have to consider what would happen if black just took this e4 pawn, which is very important. But unfortunately for black, white has this bishop d5 move. threatening both knights and pretty much winning a piece. So again, I'm using some tactics to get my development done with. So black took on d4 anyway, but he did not take on e4. He played knight a5 instead. But here, after bishop c2, I would argue that the opening is over, because the basic struggle that we had underlined, which was fighting for the e5 square, is over. And black has failed at his opening strategy, meaning he failed to keep control over the e5 pawn. He ended up taking on d4 and really doesn't have much to show for it here. So his position in the game got progressively worse as a consequence of losing this important presence in the center. And white, I would argue, is already maybe not clearly better, but at least has a very comfortable position, and definitely slightly better.